At that point, and in this little meeting, he wanted one thing. He wanted a union dues checkoff. That's the only thing they wanted at the beginning, and this must have been a month or two later. He still wanted it. At that point, he had converted it into a credit union arrangement. Loeb was agreeable to a credit union. Loeb knew that and was advised by his lawyers. I don't mean that he loved the idea, but he knew that the credit union is a federally chartered organization over which he has no control. And if these men wanted to borrow money from the credit union or make appropriate arrangements with the credit union, he would be glad to. I mean, he could not interfere. I really take back the word to be glad to, because he did not believe in the union dues checkoff. And while there's no connection in the no recognition proposition in union dues, unless you have a recognition of a union and a full collective bargaining arrangement, there wouldn't be as good a reason for union dues checkoff, even objectively, without reference to Loeb's position, I think, than there would if there were such an agreement, if there were a collective bargaining agreement. Because I could have them take my bar association dues out too, if that was the case, and everybody could. If
well, then what? Go ahead.
I want to ask two questions. First of all, Worth then was implying that he could have brought people in to have destroyed trucks and that sort of thing.
Well, Worth really brought that out during the mediations. A whole lot of stuff came out in the mediations. It was fantastic, and I'll tell you about some of it a little later. Such as expressions like "they'll come in town and they'll knock off Miss King," as Worth said. These are things I don't know that you want to report, but they happen.
Then the second question is, let's push this thing on communism for a minute, since that's obviously going to be a big thing at the trial. There's no reason to suspect communist influence in any of this, is there?
Well, there might be from some points of view, but from the standpoint of the people of whom I was a part, who were dealing with this strike situation, that facet never entered our mind. We were dealing with a problem in front of us. Whether it was motivated by communism or otherwise was really not relevant to us at that time, because we were trying to resolve something. You understand, through this, Loeb's position was he could not really get into it while there was a court injunction and while they were engaged in an illegal strike, and once that was resolved, he felt free to resolve everything else with them. The union, of course, persisted in refusing to to terminate the strike.
Now, something you said, I'm not quite clear, that once the injunction, which was on February 24th, and this injunction was a continuation of a previous injunction, wasn't it?
That's right.
Was put into effect, then you say Mayor Loeb would not negotiate with the union people?
Loeb wanted to continue doing it. He was advised that that would be, and it might be in violation of the injunction. For him to see, for these men like Worth to continue to try to negotiate with Loeb while they're enjoined not to encourage a strike or not to have anything to do with the strike, might put Loeb himself in contempt of court.
Why was this never brought out in defense of, say,
Well, it was brought out.
Was it brought out?
It was brought out. I mean,
But not very well.
the worst thing, the most horror, I had a couple of traumatic reactions to this whole thing. One of them was this. Had I lived, say, 100 miles from Memphis and followed this as an average citizen, I would have been highly in sympathy with the sanitation workers. I would have felt that this isn't through poor news coverage. This is just through not being right there and knowing things as they develop. But I would have been sympathetic. I would have thought this bunch of duds in the Memphis city.
Why do you say that, sir?
Because the thing has such apparent appeal. A bunch of poor, downtrodden niggers aren't getting enough money. And believe me, money was not an issue in this thing until later.
Yes.
They are being told, they're being given the old plantation treatment, as it's later come out. And by God, why doesn't the city of Memphis go ahead and do something nice for these poor people who are being mistreated? I would have had that reaction. That's my normal liberal reaction to many things. And I would have felt that probably the assassination of Martin Luther King was an unnecessary and unfortunate thing because the city administration wasn't as flexible as it should have been. All this I know not to be true. I tell you I'm biased. I have to be biased, even though I try not to be. And I don't honestly think I'm biased. But who am I to say I'm not biased, is my point.
Yeah, that's a biased view to begin with, isn't it?
Right. In other words, how can anyone not be biased about anything in
Sure.
which he's involved?
Right.
But I do know that there was that was not the case. That virtually all this was imposed rather than brought on by the cities.
Yeah. Well, now the point you mentioned, I think, illuminates, at least for me and what I have been able to know, the fact that Mayor Lowe was advised, and he was acting on legal grounds, that after the
Purely.
injunction not to negotiate